Welcome, everyone, to our episode on the 2023 bow and rifle season with Missouri Hunting Fishing Adventures. We are excited to kind of go over the season with you and explain a little bit what happened during the season and our successes, our failures, and just all the things that go on in deer camp during the 2023 season. We had a lot of neat people in camp from all over the United States. We had people from south of I-10 in Louisiana. We had some people north of I-10 from Louisiana. We had people from Tennessee, Georgia, and clear down into Florida as well. We had people coming up and hunting with us. We had about 35 bow hunters, about the same rifle hunters that came in to hunt with us at Missouri Hunting Fishing Adventures. Just a little bit of background on our operations. I am the director of operations. We run a full-time outfitting firm. And so this podcast is brought to you by Missouri Hunting Fishing Adventures. And we do everything from deer, duck, turkey to fishing. And we just have a neat operation with 5 lodges, 4 properties, one being on Lake of the Ozarks. And that's where we primarily do our fishing, on Lake of the Ozarks and Truman Reservoir. The bow season, it started out really interesting. We tried to get our bow hunters in the 26th of October on into about the 7th of November. We tried to get that pre-rut chase period going, and when we tried to get our hunters in a period of time where those big bucks, those 4 or 5 year old, 6-year-old deer are on their feet. I know a lot of people like to hunt, during the early season. Actually, in Missouri, our season opens September 15th, so you could be actually working some velvet deer periodically during that time, and working food sources as your primarily your hunt areas. But from my experience, hunters like to be here during the rut. And we like to keep the pressure down on our properties. And so we try to get people in to hunt around the 26th and get into that Halloween chase period, which that was really a kind of a neat period for us. We actually sat at Deer Creek Lodge one afternoon right around Halloween, and we had bucks chasing all the way around our lodge, and some really nice ones. And that was the time period where our bow hunters were seeing a lot of chasing going on. So our chase period hit just about normal right in that time period of around Halloween. I like to refer to it as bird dogging because they have their nose to the ground. They're trying to find that first 4-year-old doe coming into heat and trying to get that estrus period going with the rut is kind of a beginning with the older does. This year, not unlike the last 2 years, we had very much a trickle rut, and people say, well, what's a trickle rut? Well, it's like trickling water. It's not pouring and it's not running hard. We see the mornings being a good time period when the temperatures were down in the 40s, and we saw some pretty good movement of deer and some good deer on their feet. And then it would warm up to be sometimes 75, 76 degrees. Almost 80 sometimes. And I think one afternoon it was projected to be 82 degrees in the afternoon. I don't know if it ever made it or not, but that was during bow season. And I was picking up our clients in shorts that day. So whenever you have temperatures that get that high during the rut, it slows down a lot of deer movement, and that chase period kind of changes depending on how cool it is. And it's still going to happen. The calendar is going to tell you that based on the sunlight and the evolution of those deer. And so, we had a kind of a interesting bow season to say the least. Not unlike a lot of them, but it's bow hunting's challenging, man. It's just challenging. And even when people grab a crossbow, they think, man, it's just like a rifle, I'll be able to put the old scope on them and it's just going to be 60 to 80 yard shots all the time that I'm just going to be able to pull off. Well, in Missouri, you have what we call hardwood hunting, and you're going to be hunting in oaks, red oaks, white oaks, pin oaks, and the shooting windows are a lot tighter in those areas. And for my southern friends down there that like to be in those food plots where you got the nice green grass and you get to watch that buck chase out there for 20 minutes and decide, what the best shot is. That's not our fair chase type hunting here in Missouri. You got bucks coming by grunting and pouring on the heat on those does, and you got a very, very short time window to get on them. And the shooting lanes are very, very tight when you do get on them. And so, as normal, we had a lot of stories. We had a lot of individuals that saw great deer, saw them briefly as they come blowing by. And we had several misses as well. And we had a couple deer wounded, unfortunately. But that's part of bow hunting, and that's part of hunting, period. But, I think at one point in time during the bow season, we had over 18 shooters in one day that we had seen. And in into the season, we had a nice 150 class 8-pointer shot. We had one that was wounded, and we had a couple nice other deer that were part of our harvest during the bow season. But overall, we had all of our hunters, except maybe 10% that didn't see a major shooter. But as we say, bow hunting is a skill, and you can't be out there vaping. You can't be out there sleeping. You can't be out there on your phone. And unfortunately, sometimes we get some clients that they get caught by surprise because of some of those factors, and those things are unfortunate. And you have to really pay attention to what's going on during the chase period, because it happens very quick. Where we saw most of our deer was around oak trees and the acorns. That was our primary source pretty much throughout the season. We had decent food plots. We struggled hard with getting rain, but we had some decent food plots at Wheatland and Osceola South lodges. Our Deer Creek Lodge struggled a little bit with our food plots, but we did have some deer that were harvested during rifle season from our food plots. And hopefully with some rainfall this next year, we'll be able to recoup some good food plots for the spring turkey season. Wow. Talking about turkeys, we saw a lot of turkeys. So if you're booking with us in the spring for a turkey hunt, you should be very anxious to see what's going to be happening off the roost, because they ought to be gobbling like crazy, because there's plenty of birds out there this year. We're seeing great numbers in our destination plots. So we're just talking about our techniques and some of the things that we did to try to help our hunters. It's tough for people to rattle and tough for people to grunt in Midwest areas when they're not used to doing it or having success with it down south. And, the thing that I was trying to do a lot over the time period, I actually had a full-time client that I guided personally during the bow season and the rifle season. And, we rattled up 3 really, really nice deer for him. And, between grunting and rattling and doing it at the right time of the day with the right light levels, which that is the key to rattling. Over the years, I found out that my highest probability of getting a deer to come into a rattle or grunt is when you're just about out of light or you just barely have enough light. And that's always been my kind of hidden strategy, is to just barely have enough light, because they get very brave during those times, and they've been up all night rolling and feel very, they feel very comfortable when that low light level is. And so we had some good success rattling, some good success grunting. Most of the time, it was before daylight savings, it was 5:15 and on that we rattled our deer in the afternoon, 6:15 when daylight savings came in. And then in the mornings, if we could get daylight before 7, we were looking at around 6:40 was AM is when we were doing most of our rattling. And I was always asking the client if he could see his pins or CIV scope before we were going to go ahead and proceed to do that. Well, what does that sound like? You always say. And I had a lot of clients ask what it sounded like. And then I had some clients that just thought I was making things up, which is always interesting because, we've been doing this a long time, and we don't make things up, even though that sometimes I think that some clients become a little, apprehensive on our motives. Our motives at Missouri Hunting Fishing Adventures is to tag you out and to help you become a better hunter. And that's the only motive that we have. And, product sales and all those things is not our primarily an objective for what we're trying to do in camp. In camp, we're using tools, and those tools are, scent thief as a inhibitor for the nose, and then we're using an attractant with sound, with grunt call, and with rattling, and that's what we're trying to do. And so, in saying that, not everyone in camp, believe it or not, even tried to grunt or rattle, even though that we were having some good success. And once again, understand down south, it's not real successful, but in the Midwest, it's very successful. And using a decoy is very successful in the Midwest. One of the deer that we rattled in came right to the decoy, 42 yards. 42 yards, we made our shot on the decoy, froze him right in the middle of the trail, and made that opportunity happen at a speed in which we were able to react on. And that's sometimes tough during a time period when they're coming into a rattle. So my grunting series was the same as always during the rut. It's a long one and a slow one. And if you've ever heard a buck tick, the tick noise is just when they're just, that is exactly what they're doing. That's a tick noise that they will make. And so we make that noise on a grunt call, and then we follow it back up with really short ones and fast short ones, and then another long one. And that's the series. Long, slow, short, and long again with our grunt call. And that is creating excitement. That's giving ear candy out there for them to hear, that they think that, oh my gosh, there is a hot doe and he is right in behind him. I need to get over there and get competitive. And then, of course, the rattling is something I do after the grunting, after I do a couple series of grunting, and that gets out a little bit further and makes a little bit more noise that covers a little bit more ground if they're out there so far they can't hear the grunt. And my primary purpose of rattling is to do a lot of tine sounds. I want that tines of that antlers to really be tinging, because it's high pitch and it travels through the timber. And then when I bring them together nice and solid, and then I go back to a lot of tine sounds, getting the tines together. Been very successful over the years with that, and I would highly suggest that during the time period of Halloween on, and it works well during that chase period when they're setting that pecking order. As far as using the decoys, what we do with our decoys, we set them up in a way in which we try to create an approach. The one that I used this year was I actually set it up on a scrape and made a scrape underneath the deer, and it had a licking branch right up above him, and the leaves were dense enough that it really stuck out. And I did it in a way in which it didn't hinder him coming down the shooting trail that we actually had, the lane that was set up for the shot. I made sure he was off to the right side, facing the direction I thought he would come from. And then you say, how do you know where he comes from? because I've set up there before and called them in there before. I've done it before in that area, and I know the direction they like to come from. And sure enough, he came exactly from that direction, came down that trail, saw that buck over a licking branch and a scrape, and he stopped. And then he turned broadside, and then that's when I bad and got him to stop again 2 more times, and then that's when we took our shot. And so try to make it look realistic, if you can, like a licking branch above and put a scrape down below him. I mean, that just adds to the realism of a decoy. And not real often do I use it in the timber. Not real often, but in this scenario, I thought it would work because there was a large shooting lane set up in 3 different directions on that. And I've had good success there before because the timber is very sparse and you can see quite a ways in that timber. Just some thoughts for you there. Hopefully that'll help you a little bit. And then as far as spraying down the decoy, yeah, I spray it down with Scent Thief to cover the scent. Most of the time in my experiences, the scent on the decoy doesn't have a big impact because it happens so quick. Once they get within 10 yards, they're bringing the heat. They're going to blow everything up. It's not like they're going to come up there and smell his nose. That's not going to happen. Once they get to 10 to 15 yards, they're going to square up and they're going to blow it up. And so as far as an odor or a smell of human, it's going to be more downwind of that than just at the decoy. So just something to be aware of as well. So the 2023 season moved into the rifle part of it right at the 11th of November. We hunted right up to the 7th. Our departure of our bow hunters departed around the 7th of November. And then we had about a 4-day break there before we put the rifle hunters out in the timber. At that point in time, we still had several stands that never had anyone in them. And that always makes it good for our rifle hunters. The problem that we have during rifle hunting during the Missouri season is that, the peak of the rut usually starts really wrapping up around the 6th, the 7th, right in there. It really starts to kind of change its look. And what does it change to? Well, it changed to a lockdown period. Once you get into around the 11th and 12th, 13th, 14th of November, a lot of times we're seeing it a lockdown, and we're seeing, in fact, at the end of the bow season, we had a buck laying down in the field. It was hot, and he was there with 2 does. He just laid down in the field, and our client actually grunted him to get him to come over to shoot him, and he was a dandy. He was a real dandy, and but that's just showing lockdown. Pretty darn quick, and the heat having an impact on it as well. But so lockdown, if you ask, the experts out there, what is lockdown? Well, lockdown is when you've got a doe that is receptive, and you've got a buck or more than one buck. Last year, we had 4 different bucks on one doe. And the biggest one ended up scoring 182, and there was 3 others that were just as good as that one that was just hanging with that one doe. And so they were locked down with one doe that is receptive, and they just stay with that doe until they get to the point where they want to move on. And she'll get to the point where she lays down, and they'll lay down right along with her. And that creates a change in the movement of the deer. They're not searching anymore. They're not cruising, as we call it. They're not cruising anymore. They're right there with that doe. And that's why a lot of times you'll see a lot of smaller 2-year-olds that are out cruising all the time, is because they are not part of the process. And they will not be part of the process as long as the bigger ones chase them off. And they will continue to chase them off and send them about their way. And they almost become just like bulls in the elk world, where they become satellite deer, where they just go around and around, and they wish they could be part of the process, but the bigger bucks are going to chase them off. And so when you see that going on, where you're seeing a lot of 2-year-olds and you're not seeing those big mature deer like you were seeing, you're probably moved into the lockdown period. So That was happening during our rifle season, along with pretty much just morning movement, and then we'd have 30 minutes of good hunting from 5:15 or 6:15 on, and that doesn't give you much time to connect with a good deer. A lot of our deer stayed nocturnal, and a lot of them we never did get to actually have a hunter see them. At least as far as we know, they didn't see them. But especially on our Osceola properties, we had 2 deer there. We had 1 deer at Osceola South that was pushing a good 190 inches that we saw in the field by 2 guides. 2 different guides got pictures of that deer, and he was hanging in a bean field and moving throughout. And we never did see him during rifle season, or never. Well, we did, but we never saw him with a client. And we saw him a few times during the bow season and set up on him, and still didn't get on him. And then we had sheds that were 7.5 inches in diameter at Osceola North, with a deer that very well could score in the 170s, but never laid eyes on him either during the bow season or the rifle season. And so those things happen. And the thing is to maintain your pressure in your areas, and that's why we use what we call swing properties. We swing into some of those properties and we swing out of those properties, and we give them sometimes 2 days rest, sometimes 3 days rest, sometimes just an afternoon rest. And we move back into what we call our home lodges or properties that we're actually housed at, and we hunt on a consistent basis. And those are some things that you need to think about when you're out, hunting your property. How often are you riding the same hole? Because if you keep riding that same hole, there is a conditional factor that comes in play with those deer. They become conditioned. And if you can throw a little curveball to them, sometimes that makes all the difference in the world. I like to move around in my stands. And if I'm seeing a good deer in one area, then I really take note of when I'm seeing them. And then I hunt that time period with at least a 2-day break, sometimes a 3-day break, and be there on that time period. It's just, there's just a whole lot of conditioning that deer go through when they start feeling pressure, seeing you coming in, hearing you leaving. And that's probably one of our biggest challenges, to be truthful, as outfitters, is because everyone, when they come out of the stand, they're excited and they want to tell stories and they want to tell everything that's gone on. And they want to, share their hunt, which, boy, I want to hear everything about it, because it is a neat opportunity to share what you've seen, and I'm excited for them. But we got to be quiet and discreet, get in and out, and hopefully not spook any deer in that process. We want to encourage you to get on our Facebook and our Instagram. We posted a lot of pictures of our deer season, and I know that Matt, our marketing manager, is going to be also doing some things with some reels to kind of sum up everything that happened during the bow and rifle season. But we have a lot of summation pictures there that you can see, and some post interviews of some people that we had harvest some good deer. We had some big groups out of Mississippi and a big group out of Louisiana that was in camp during rifle season. And the challenge that we have so much as outfitters is to make sure that our deer get to a 3 to 4 year old age. And sometimes our friends from the South, when they see a deer that's going to score in the 120s and it's going to weigh maybe 220 pounds, sometimes even more, it's tough for them to allow that deer to walk. But this year we're going to be working on some things to encourage that a little bit more. With some of our policies that we're going to have at Missouri Hunting, Fishing Adventures. But, we want to take this opportunity to thank Scent Thief for everything they did for us during the season. We use that product religiously with our clients, and that product is something that I encourage you to use. It's something that will make a huge difference. And really, one of our guides from Alabama was trying to explain to some of our hunters that, if you're using Scent Thief, then we don't have to get all concerned about having 4 stands around a food plot. We don't need them. We don't need 4 stands for 4 different wind directions. And they couldn't quite understand that, some of our clients, because scent thief, it makes downwind a direction that deer come from, and not a direction that they detect you from. And that makes a big difference when you're sitting in the stand, when you're feeling very comfortable in the fact that you're not going to get winded. And so our sets sometimes become challenging to some of the people that are still having to fight being busted with wind direction. But that's a product that we used a lot. And we also were very happy with our Baronet and River's Edge stands and blinds. Those have created a comfort level for our clients over the years that is encouraging and keeps them in the stand a lot longer when they are comfortable, and makes it more enjoyable when you're warm and when you're comfortable in a tree. And we thank them tremendously for the products that they provide for us as well. So we are going to go into episode 2. And episode 2, we're going to get in some particulars on individuals' hunts and how those hunts developed during the Missouri rifle season and bow season. And I'm going to also explain some of the things that we saw with our clients that made them successful. And then we're also going to explain some things that created them some issues with getting busted and not being successful. Because I think we learn, just like any sport, there is ups and downs, and there's also things that we need to learn from in order to continue to get better. And it's not by chance that some people are successful more often than other people. It's the fact that they have experience and they've been able to create a kind of a skill set that they are able to perform at to be successful. So we're going to talk about some of those things in our next episode of the 2023 bow and rifle season.